Welcome back to another weekly Forex forecast, traders. I am FX Telepath. I've been doing these forecasts for well over 5 years now, so in my opinion, you are in the right place. So stay tuned for the entire forecast. And as always, we start with the most important one, which is the DXY, the US dollar. And I've been talking about this weekly area demand for quite a while now. More importantly, this weekly demand zone, this green box you see here, more importantly, it's inside of a monthly area of demand. So that is why I have remained kind of bullish. I mean, there has been weeks over the past couple months where I had been bearish on the dollar, definitely. But the last couple weeks, we did wick right back into this weekly demand and rally back out. Now, again, it's a very tested area. We've already reacted off of it once. So anytime we get a second touch, it's not the highest odds situation. However, since we have the monthly demand in control, it actually could cause price to rally out. Obviously, we're going to have to take a look at some of the lower time frames to see what is really taking place. And on the daily time frame here, you can see we actually have a very nice daily downward trend line. The touch points are from up here to right here. We kind of pushed up, started to test like the upper part of this entire channel, if you want to view it like that. So to me, that is why we started to sell off. It is possible we would trace up more towards the trend line and continue to rally down. All I know is as long as this daily downward trend line is holding, we could expect the dollar to actually continue to fall back down to that weekly demand zone that we were just discussing. Now, if we break that trend line, we will just most likely be pulling up to the supply zone where we can then see maybe a small move off of that daily supply. But overall, the dollar actually is looking kind of weak right now. And on the 4-hour time frame, we've really just lost trend and we're just going sideways. You can see this purple box. Let me just change it to my new updated drawing. This purple box here, this is liquidity. This is what I call support, what most people would call a support area. And what I would like to see is another reaction off the support area, which would then give this older demand zone down at 97.04 more weight, where we can then maybe see a push up. So we could actually see the dollar fall down to this demand and then rally off of it. And again, if we react off of this support area, meaning all the stop losses are going to be here, that is going to make that zone an even higher odds situation. Now on the 1-hour time frame, the last daily market breakdown video, I talked about this 1-hour area demand. And basically what I was telling the members is we have a 1-hour demand zone down below. So we want to be very careful when the dollar pushes back down to this demand zone because we most likely see a reaction off of the demand zone. I mean, that is exactly what has happened here. It's a good demand zone that removed a trend line. So what I think we could be seeing is basically price ping pong between supply and demand. If we break this 1-hour demand zone, any supply zone there is going to be a decent potential opportunity. And to me, that is going to signal to me that the daily downward trend is going to continue and we will be pulling back down to the 4-hour area of demand. So for now on the dollar, what I will be watching basically is this 1-hour supply and the 1-hour demand. And if we remove the demand zone, it's most likely we're pulling back down to the 4-hour demand where we can then see a move up. But again, if we break the 1-hour demand zone, all signs are pointing to the downside and that the daily trend is going to continue down. So for now, we will be watching the 1-hour demand, the 1-hour supply, and then the 4-hour demand. All right, moving on to the forecast for the euro US dollar. On the weekly time frame, we have nothing but strength here, obviously. I mean, it's very aggressive. We are kind of due for a deeper pullback, I would say. I'm not saying we should just be shorting because we're quote unquote due for a pullback, right? I'm just saying price has gotten pretty aggressive here. And if price pulled back, you know, it wouldn't really surprise me all that much. Obviously, we're going to go down to the lower time frames, see what is taking place. One of the things, especially if you are a swing trader that you want to monitor, is this daily upward trend line. That is going to be, you know, our weekly / monthly outlook of where price is going to go. As long as this trend line is holding, I mean, we could definitely expect price to continue to rally up. And even if we break this trend line, we just want to then wait for this demand zone to be hit. Then we could add swing trades down there. So it's looking pretty bullish on the euro, even if we do, you know, break that upward trend line. And just want to say a huge thanks to everybody for continuing to watch these weekly Forex forecast videos and liking and subscribing, as we just did another donation because all ad revenue is donated to my local hospice charity. So thank you to everybody for continuing to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Much appreciated. So that is the daily view for the euro US dollar. The 4-hour and the 1-hour view are very unsure right now. You can see on the 4-hour time frame we broke the 4-hour downward trend line, and on the 1-hour time frame we broke the 1-hour downward trend line. So what do we do in this situation? It's quite tricky in my opinion. We have a pretty good area of demand down below there on the euro with a liquidity trap. So if we do, push down to this area, I would love to see a reaction off this support, then a pullback down that demand. That is where we could look for potential long trades. As far as near term trading, if you are a day trader, we basically just want to be watching this 1 hour time frame. If we can break this low, to me, that is going to be a 1 hour downward trend. Then we can start to short some pullbacks. But for now in the euro, it's not looking too great because we broke trend. I mean, there's just not a lot going on. I guess there is actually a demand zone here that removed that downward trend line. But the issue with this demand zone is we barely got, like, the initial move is decent. I would like to see a more of an extended move. So if you want to get aggressive, it's not a bad 1 hour zone. For maybe a quick long at 1.17, I wouldn't put too much weight on it. If you want confirmation, it might be better in here on a 5 minute time frame. So you could simply just wait for the zone to be hit, look for a 5 minute time frame confirmation there on the euro US dollar, but just not a lot of zones forming, and there's no trends except for the daily trend line and the 4 hour and the weekly trend. So in theory, longs are going to be better because of the daily trend and the weekly trend. Whether or not we get a pullback down that demand zone for our long or down to the 4 hour demand zone, both are going to be pretty decent. And then obviously going back to the 1 hour chart, if we get something like this where we create a very clear pivot low here and we have a nice 1 hour trend, that is going to be a very positive sign as well. And then 5 minute time frame longs are going to be good. But until then, I would just be waiting for that 1 hour demand zone pullback or that 4 hour demand zone pullback on the euro US dollar. Alrighty, moving on to the forecast for gold. Absolutely on a tear lately. The issue on the weekly time frame is there hasn't really been a lot of zones created. Even this zone is like mediocre at best. I really love this weekly demand zone below 3,500 at 30.93. Are we going to get a pullback down there? What do you guys think? Me personally, I don't know. I would love a pullback down there. It'd be a great dip buying opportunity. Even if we get a pullback down in this zone, it's a great dip buying opportunity as well. I wish we were forming more weekly zones here. It's just we're not getting those explosive moves, and it's kind of unfortunate. The nearest higher time frame is in like daily and weekly. The nearest zone I am seeing is there is a daily zone here. It's not great. We can draw it. The issue is look at how close this stay away candle is. It's really not great, so I do prefer this zone lower at 36.86, but in theory both of these daily demand zones at 37.65 and 36.86, both of these daily demand zones are going to be good for our H1 confirmation trades. And then let's say we get an H1 demand zone, and let's say you don't trade the H1, you're a day trader. Well, then when we contact this H1 demand zone, then we could look for longs on like a 5 minute time frame. And what that is you've basically just turned a daily zone into a 5 minute time frame zone, which you can really increase your risk to reward on. So a lot of options here on gold. On the 4 hour time frame, I really like what I'm seeing here. We have a clear trend line from here to here, and we got a nice reaction off of our trend line. We always do it. Like basically you guys could probably create some sort of entry model based off of my trend lines. I've never tried it because I already have my trading system in with supply and demand zones, but my trend lines are very accurate. You can see, I mean, if you join the group or even if you just pay attention to the weekly forecast, you'll see the accuracy of my trend lines. The trend line's drawn from here to here, and this is a reaction off of the trend line. So that's a very, very positive sign. And as long as that trend line's holding, I like 15 minute time frame longs. If we break that trend line, then at that point we either need to go to an H1 chart or we need to wait for a pullback all the way down to this demand zone at 36.97, which is basically inside of this overall daily demand zone. So basically anywhere in this area here is going to be a great time to look for a dip buying opportunity if we can get that pullback in gold. I'm not saying that we are. On the 1 hour time frame, we do have a 1 hour supply zone here, and I was telling the members in the daily market breakdown video yesterday, I don't love the idea of shorting gold right now. The reason why is, again, on the weekly chart and the daily chart, price looks like this, and we're on an absolute tear. So I actually prefer the long trades. We did get one here that ended up breaking, but a nice move. Probably, I think over a 2-to-1 there was hit. And now that created a supply zone. So as far as a counter trend supply zone goes, this is as good as it's going to get. I mean, it removed an upward trend line. That is a very, very significant zone in my opinion. Not only that, there's a very explosive move. So this is as good as a zone is going to get for a counter trend trade. You can see it's not working out too great so far. Counter trend trades are always going to be lower odds in my opinion. And even if the trade works out, right, you can really only expect a quick move, like a 1-to-1, 2-to-1. So I was telling members, yeah, you could short at the zone. I'm personally not, but if you want to short, you just got to be aggressive with trade management, meaning if price pushes out 1-to-1, move your stop to break even or half risk, or take 80% off and let the rest ride your stop at break even, right? There's so many different options to be aggressive with trade management, and that is what we wanted to do here. So this trade's not looking great. However, if you are bearish gold for whatever reason, you could still be looking for shorts on a 5-minute time frame as long as this supply zone is being respected. If we break this supply, hopefully we'll be left with a 1-hour demand zone there where we can get a potential pullback on. So that's what I'm going to be waiting for gold. I prefer long trades with the 4-hour trend, with the daily trend. So me personally, I'm going to be waiting for the 1-hour supply zones to be taken out, hopefully creating new demand zones, or waiting for the daily demand zones to be hit to continue to look for longs. All shorts, got to be aggressive with trade management, guys. Alrighty, now on to the forecast for the USDJPY. Not a lot going on the weekly chart here. I've talked about it many times. We do have a liquidity trap down below. We could be targeting that, but I mean, we've seen nothing but momentum here. Last week, pretty bearish, engulfing that green candle there. So it is looking pretty weak here on the USDJPY, I will say that. And why do we see a crash off of the USDJPY? Well, in my opinion, it's because of this daily area of supply. You can go back and watch my forecast starting back in whenever this was in August. I've had this supply zone on my charts. So, you know, beautiful move off of this supply level here to the downside, and that is why we saw the USDJPY fall. Now, we could be falling all the way back down to this daily demand where we can then react off of that demand at 145.23. I wouldn't be surprised. The accuracy of my zones is pretty good. That's why we got a reaction out there, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get a reaction off of that. However, I'm not 100%, so don't expect it to be 100% all the time. It's going to fail sometimes, right? Obviously, that's trading. This is not, on my channel, I mean very, very realistic here. I'm not talking about like thousands of percent returns like a lot of these people. So these zones still fail, but so far seeing very nice moves and seeing supply zones being respected here. Now, a couple options for trading. Really tricky situation here on the 4-hour time frame. We almost pulled back down this demand zone, so close. It's kind of tricky. The issue with the zone is this weird wick. Usually I never ignore a wick like that. I'm not going to get into detail why I did here. I don't already love the zone based off of that. So this zone makes me a little bit nervous. What I will say is I like the basing up here before the zone. So if you are going to get in long at this demand zone at 146.52, I would be aggressive with my trade management, meaning if price goes 1-to-1, I would consider selling, or I would consider moving my stop to break even at minimum, or selling half, moving stop to break even, selling 80%, 75%. There's so many different options I've talked about here. That's what I would do if you want to get in long at that 4-hour area of demand, just because it makes me a little bit nervous that we almost contacted it already. So that's what I'd be doing on the 4-hour time frame. On the 1-hour time frame, we had a beautiful 1-hour supply zone here. My entry was just missed, and you can see one of our members, Alex, caught a beautiful little trade there, a quick one on the USDJPY at that 1-hour area of supply, and this one was a loser, depending on how, if you look for a 1-to-1, you're good. But this was a losing trade, and that's the so everyone asks me all the time, which zone do I take? Which zone do I take? Well, look at this situation. Let's say let's say you look for 1-to-1s. Well, 1-to-1s, you're up 2% off of these trades, depending if you got filled on this one. If you lost this one and you look for 2-to-1s and you won this one, now you're up 1%, right? That's why it's good to just take both sometimes, especially if you are confident in them. There is a 1-hour demand zone down below. The only issue with this 1-hour demand is that 4-hour demand zone sitting right below it. So if you want to get in long at this demand zone, this has got to be a quick one as well. Aggressive trade management off of this one. I like the zone. I like that it removes supply. The basing's good. I love the move away. The only issue is that we have that better 4-hour demand zone sitting right below it. So it makes me nervous. So Be extra careful with this one. Again, aggressive trade management is preferred off of a zone like that for those reasons. If we do push up and we break this supply zone, we will have a 1 hour trend. Then we could look for 5-minute time frame longs, and we might have a 1 hour demand zone there that we could look for longs off of as well. So that's how I would view the 1 hour chart, and hopefully the 4 hour chart view makes sense. And as always, guys, any questions about any of my analysis, leave a comment. I respond to literally every single comment that anyone's ever posted on my channel. Alrighty, on to the forecast for the GBPUSD. This one's kind of a roller coaster and can get very confusing. So this is actually a great example of how trading gets so confusing, especially when you use multiple time frame analysis. It can be extra confusing. However, it can definitely save you, and it saved me from so many bad trades. So on the pound here on the weekly time frame, we have a weekly demand zone in control with a weekly trend. The issue is that the demand zone was very tested, and it looks like we might be pulling back in. Usually a second test, not too good, especially when we've tested the zone so deep. However, we cannot deny the strength of the weekly trend and the weekly demand zone in control. But as far as the short term goes, right, I can tighten this up just a little bit. We had a upward trend line that was looking very good, especially considering the weekly trend. However, that trend was broken by this area of supply. So we were actually reacting off of this daily area of supply. The reason I pretty much ignored this daily supply zone, one, is because we got such a quick pullback into it, not the best situation, and the fact that a weekly demand is stronger than a daily supply zone. So you can kind of see how it's a little bit confusing right now. On the 4 hour chart, we did break this 4 hour trend. However, if you are bearish, we have a supply level sitting above at 1.36. If you're bearish, that will be our supply zone short. That's really the only zone I'm seeing for potential short trades. So that might be one you want to have on your charts for the short trades. We actually caught a pretty good long trade, almost no drawdown except for initially on this 1 hour demand zone trade. So this was a 1 hour demand zone trade called out in the daily market breakdown videos, which are a breakdown I release for the Diamond members every single day. If you want to trade alongside myself and the members, join the Diamond membership, where you will have access to the 38-page supply and demand zone PDF, which will be your complete trading guide, the daily market breakdown videos, which are forecasts that I release every single night for the members to trade alongside myself, step-by-step video lessons A to Z covering everything you need to know on supply and demand trading, the Sunday strategy Zoom session where members submit homework, and it's an interactive 1 hour call where we go over all of your homework and every trading related question, private access to myself inside of our private Discord group where I answer all of your trading related questions, and finally the Sunday live stream forecast where we break down over 30 markets together. And it's not just me. Here are some of the members and some of their trades they've been taking lately, absolutely killing it. And we also have some amazing reviews from some of the past members sharing their experience within the group. So if you're ready to trade alongside myself and the community, join the Diamond membership today. Links in the description down below. So beautiful move, almost, again, no drawdown off of that zone, which is funny because the better zone's actually still sitting down below. So even if we do get a pullback down to this origin of the entire move at 1.33, I still think this is a good 1 hour zone down below. Now, with this trade now, it looks like we might be breaking this trend line. However, it's technically still holding. So if we do continue to push down and start to break below the trend line, I think you could actually continue to look for 5-minute time frame shorts. And then once we contact this demand again, I would look to maybe take profit or be aggressive with your trade management once we contact this area of demand. So a little bit tricky right now as this trade's already worked out. So for now, you just want to watch the downward trend line. You could be shorting as long as that downward trend line is being respected. We can wait for this 1 hour demand zone to be hit for a potential long trade. Might want to be more aggressive with your trade management on there. And even on this trade, right, it was pretty much necessary to be a little bit aggressive with trade management based on the daily supply and control. And it actually ended up working out a bigger trade than expected. So I love when that happens. So again, to recap, we have the 4 hour supplies and above for a potential short trade, 1 hour downward trend line. We could be day trading with that. And then the 1 hour demand zone pullback down below on the GBPUSD. Alrighty, on the forecast for the USDCAD, weekly demand zone in control, weekly trend line holding. I've had people message me, oh, the trend line was removed. Not according to my rules. That trend line is clearly being held here, as we've seen many reactions off of that trend line, and more importantly, not more importantly, but pretty important as well, a weekly demand zone in control on the USDCAD. It wasn't looking great though, right? If you look in the daily time frame, things weren't looking too bullish here, things weren't looking too bullish here, but now that we have a beautiful daily trend line, that's going to kind of be our direction here on the USDCAD. I will admit, if you look at it in kind of a channel, we clearly are at the top of the channel. I would rather be getting in long below the midpoint of the channel, you know, or at the trend line. That's how I would kind of be viewing that right now. That didn't stop us from getting a beautiful, picture perfect 4-hour area of demand trade off of that zone on the USDCAD. Picture perfect setup. Called out beforehand in the daily market breakdown video. I call trades out beforehand with video proof. Okay, I don't just share screenshot fake P&Ls. Just, oh, look at me. Every trade I call out, there's video proof of it. This trend line currently being tested, so would make me a little bit nervous. This is for trade management purposes. This is where, let's say you're long in this trade and you haven't sold anything yet, which is ballsy. If we close below this trend line, that's when I'd probably get out of the trade, because to me, that's going to signal we could be pulling back down to this demand zone. And at that point, I want to be out of the trade. I want my gains locked in. So I want to be watching this 4-hour trend line as long as it's holding. 15-minute time frame longs are good. I don't really like any demand down there for longs. So it's really all going to revolve around that 4-hour trend line right now on the USDCAD. It's longs all the way on the day trading time frames. We just need to monitor that 4-hour trend line. All right, now we are on to the forecast for the AUDUSD. I will say there's not a lot going on in this pair right now, but I don't really change up the pairs I do. I try to keep the same pairs every single week to be consistent, but obviously the momentum is up, but there's just nothing going on this weekly chart. At least on the daily time frame, we actually have a nice trend line here. The trend line was clearly respected here. As I was saying earlier, my trend lines are pretty damn accurate. However, it's kind of it's the first touch of the trend line, really. So if we do push back down to it, we could expect it to break, maybe pull back down to that daily demand zone, and it's a decent little pullback entry down below. I know nobody's going to enter on that daily demand zone. It's just, I'm saying it's a decent spot for a confirmation trade. And you're going to see on the lower time frames, the H4 and in the H1 here, there's nothing going on. But what I will say is, as long as this daily trend line's holding, longs are going to be preferred. Okay, so if we break the trend line, then we kind of got to hold off. But for now, longs are preferred. The issue is there's nothing. Like on the 4-hour time frame, we broke trend, and a lot of the times when we break a trend line, we will have a zone. Here in this instance, we didn't really have anything. So there's not a lot going on, except for all the way down here, we have some very, very old zones. 2 fresh zones. This one back here, and then this one right here. This zone was already tested. So at this point, I would just be waiting for this demand zone to be hit. And then obviously if you break that low, we will have a 4-hour downward trend line. Then we could be day trading short in a 15-minute time frame, but we just don't have that yet. So we just need to be watching if we break that low. And like I said, pullbacks down to that demand could be good at 0.643, or the one all the way down lower below all of the liquidity down below. So a couple good zones there. They're just kind of old. So if we do pull back, I want to see something like this before the zone, creating liquidity. Then the pullback would make me a little bit more comfortable at an older zone like that. So that's what that's what I'd prefer. And then obviously on the 4-hour chart, if we really get a nice valley here and a higher high, if we have an upward trend line, then we could be looking for longs. I just don't see any trends right now. There's really nothing going on. Even on the 1-hour chart, there is really no trends. If you want here, I will draw this low. If we break this low, then we will have a 1-hour downward trend, which means 5-minute time frame shorts are going to be good. But until then, I just wouldn't be trading it. I'd be holding off, waiting for those demand zones to be hit, or waiting for the trends to start again. However, if you just are so eager to trade the Aussie, my personal bias is to the upside based off of this daily trend. And as long as that daily trend line's holding, my bias is going to be to the upside on the Aussie US dollar. Okay, on to the forecast for the USDCHF. Very similar to the DXY weekly time frame, where we reacted off of a weekly demand, came back in for a second tap. So it's looking weaker, and it's a very old zone anyways. So it is looking pretty weak. However, on the daily chart, I shouldn't say however, the daily downward trend line is currently being respected. The touch point is here, and then this is a reaction off of our trend line. So it's looking pretty weak. It's looking like it is going to continue to fall. However, if we break the trend line, that's obviously going to be a bearish event. So that is something that we need to be mindful of. Now, we had a nice 1 hour trend. Things were looking good, and we pretty much broke it with no issue. And then the other issue is that we did not create a good enough supply level up here for me to draw for maybe a quick short trade. And that sucks. But honestly, all part of trading is being patient and waiting for zones to actually be contacted, guys, and to be created. There is a older demand zone down over here on the 1 hour chart. It's very old. So if we, and not like very old, I mean, it was created mid-September. It's just old in the sense of this time frame. For example, a 1 month old zone on a weekly time frame is not old. So what I would like to see is a reaction off the support, then a pullback down that zone, and then a quick trade management off of this zone. I think that would make more sense. Just kind of based off of the higher time frame trends, it's looking pretty weak. So this has got to be a quick trade. But again, I'd only really feel comfortable if we can create liquidity here, which means the stop losses would be below, which would make it a higher odds trading situation. So that's what I'd be doing on the 1 hour chart. On the 4 hour time frame, if you notice here, we have a pretty clear area of liquidity above this purple box, and we created it, reacted off of it, almost reacted off of it again. If you notice, we have a pretty decent base drop supply level at 0.803. That could be good for a quick short, not a quick short trade, maybe even a decently, maybe 3-to-1, 4-to-1 trade, maybe 5-to-1. I think I like it. It's a good zone, kind of weird basing, so wider stop might be preferred there. But at the end of the day, that is our highest odds 4 hour supply zone for a short trade here on the USD Swiss. And look, if we push up, if we break the supply, then we could get in long, right? If there's a demand zone there, then we could get in long. But for now, I'm just really seeing that short trade, especially with the weekly trend and the daily trend on the downside. I think it's a pretty decent area of supply for a short trade on the USDCHF. And if you guys want to get help with your trading psychology, check out my podcast, the Stoic Trading Psychology Podcast, available anywhere you get your podcasts for download. And I have a YouTube channel as well if you feel more comfortable watching on YouTube. Check it out. Trading psychology is a massive part of trading, and if you don't have that down, you will never be successful. So that's why I created the podcast. A lot of positive feedback. Hope to see you guys there. All right, last but not least, we will do a full top-down analysis here on crude oil. So, very tricky chart. We have a weekly downward trend, so the bias is to the downside. However, we had that weekly demand in control. It was looking positive, but obviously this past week, very negative week on oil. However, the weekly demand is still being respected. So longs actually still could be good. However, unfortunately for the people who want to get in long, we did just make another low here, which has given us a very good daily downward trend line. This daily downward trend line is very sustainable, in my opinion. I wouldn't be surprised if it holds, if we tap off of it and it holds. So it's very sustainable, in my opinion, and that is why I'm actually leaning more towards bearishness on oil. It doesn't mean we can't get a quick long trade, and right now we are actually inside of an older 4 hour zone, but if you look, we did create some sort of liquidity right before this zone, so that is why I didn't mind this area, and we already kind of got to move off of it. So at this point, depending on how aggressive you are at trade management, you might have been stopped out at break even. It really all depends, but it wouldn't surprise me if we do get maybe a small 1-to-1, at least the size of the zone, maybe a move up to above 62. Wouldn't really surprise me here on oil, based on the fact that it's a pretty decent zone with a liquidity trap. If we do retrace all the way up to this supply, I think it's a good little hidden supply zone there at 64.78 for a short trade on the 4 hour time frame. It's actually not too bad. And if you want to get more aggressive with your trading, and when I say more aggressive, it doesn't mean it's bad. I know people who trade very aggressively and, you know, their win rate is a little bit lower, but sometimes they hit crazy trades because they're very aggressive, where it's just, there's no right and wrongs, right? There's pros and cons to everything, guys. We did create kind of a liquidity trap here on this 1 hour area of supply at 61.69. So it is kind of at the low end here, right? I prefer a supply zone up here. It's just kind of a better price. So it does feel like you're chasing here a bit. And the fact that the weekly demand is in control makes me a little bit nervous about this. So if you want to short at the zone, you can. I would just be aggressive with trade management due to the fact that the weekly demand is in control. So we could see this thing kind of blast through. It wouldn't shock me. And if you want to trade with the weekly demand, if we remove that supply, any demand zone there is going to be a pretty good trading opportunity. A little bit aggressive compared to a 4-hour demand zone, but that's what we could be looking for. So nice 1-hour supply zone there that we could be kind of viewing our entire trading on oil off of, right? If you want to get in short, that is our supply zone. If we remove the supply zone, any demand zone there is going to be long. So you could really just view it all on that 1-hour area of supply there, or the 4-hour area of supply above. If you guys want access to my full-length forecast, join the Diamond membership where you will have access to that, as well as my daily market forecast, the full course supply and demand PDF, and much, much more. Make sure you guys subscribe so you can catch next week's forecast as well. And I always appreciate a like. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.